We have a exciting start of an exciting week, the second Science Week we are arranging here in Singapore to connect Norwegian and Singapore universities, academia, and businesses and institutions. We will have a 4-day event this week, and we're starting with the sustainable urban development this today. But before going further, I'd like to give the word to our ambassador to Singapore, Ambassador Eivind Homme, to start with some opening remarks. So with that, Eivind Homme, I'll give the word to you.
Thank you very much, Kristoffer. Dear Singaporean and Norwegian speaker and participants, dear friends. Yes, good morning, god morgen in Norway. I know it's a little bit dark there still. And good afternoon to you here in a rainy afternoon in Singapore. I'm delighted, together with Dr. Mari Sundli Tveit, the Chief Executive Officer of the Norwegian Research Council, and Dr. Per Christer Lund, Innovation Norway, our Science and Technology Counselor, to open the Norway-Singapore Science Week 2021. And as a newcomer to Singapore, I've in fact only been here about 2 months now, to be able this week to greet, listen to, and to learn from you, our country's best minds, responding to the pressing demands for green growth and transformation within new fields of expertise. Our Science Week coincides with COP26 in Glasgow, and strong hopes for higher global ambitions and progress. I know we all think about what's going to happen there these days and weeks ahead. There, among its many meetings, over 2 countries' ministers of environment will jointly share the work on implementation of Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, which remains unsolved. And that's a very, very important article, because this covers cooperation among countries to meet emission reduction targets, including through international carbon markets. Last week, I had the great honor to present my credentials to the President of Singapore. From our conversation, I'm happy, very happy to share that we were in full agreement about our nations enjoying a strong friendship and excellent bilateral relations. Our bilateral relations are built on maritime and commercial ties going back more than 1.5 centuries. Politically, on a common belief in a rules-based international order with open and free trade and freedom of navigation. Today, we stand united in fighting COVID-19 and climate change and being active in multilateral and regional cooperation, including Singapore being observer in the Arctic Council and Norway as sector dialogue partner with ASEAN. Singapore has long served as a hub for Norwegian businesses towards the Asia-Pacific region. Today, with about 200 Norwegian companies here. The Norwegian Classification Society, DNV, the Norske Veritas, and the ship owner and management company, Wilhelmsen, have been present in Singapore since the latter part of the 19th century. From the 1970s onward, Norway has built strong relationship with Singapore yards to support the Norwegian offshore and oil and gas industry. Relations that are vibrant with large projects like the integration project by Keppel for Equinor's Bacalhau FSPO in Brazil, and submarines work on Equinor's FPSO vessel Johan Castberg. The majority of the Norwegian companies in Singapore are still within the maritime and offshore sector. Their partners, as Singapore is evolving from a manufacturing centered towards a more knowledge and innovative based economy, it becomes attractive for a wide range of Norwegian technology companies. Leading companies like DNV, the Norske Veritas, Kongsberg, Wilhelmsen, and our Telenor operator Telenor have established research and technology divisions and laboratories in Singapore. The motivation is clearly to take advantage of the increasingly vibrant ecosystem for higher quality and innovation. Singapore's ambition of developing into a global Asia hub for technology and innovation, based on excellent academic and research institutes, access to financing, and access to markets. A development that long has been recognized by the Norwegian government, by our universities, and our research institutes. That's why the Embassy and Innovation Norway for over 20 years have had a science and technology counselor in Singapore. The maritime and offshore industry was initially the main focus. The Norwegian Research Council and Singapore's Maritime and Port Authority, MPA, established already in year 2000 a formal research cooperation agreement. A 3-year agreement renewed 8 times, last time in April this year during the Singapore Maritime Week. But over the last 50 years, we have seen our research cooperation expanding from the maritime sector into new areas, such as sustainable urban development, which we talk about today, medical technologies, renewable energy and decarbonization, circular economy solutions, and food production, primarily then within aquaculture. Day 3 of the Science Week is dedicated to Arctic. So today, I will just mention that since Singapore became an observer to the Arctic Council in 2013, with strong Norwegian support, I will hasten to add, the embassy has supported dialogue and cooperation between Singapore and Norway on several topics. They include climate change and sea level rise, Arctic shipping and the northern trade routes, sustainable energy and resource management, and also international law. Dear friends, in addition to research cooperation, education and student exchange has also played an important role in the Norway-Singapore relations. Before the COVID shutdown, several hundred Singaporean students took courses in Norway, primarily at BEI, the Norwegian Business School Executive Maritime MBA program, and today there are also around 180 alumni just from the Norwegian University of Science and Technology here in Singapore. Singapore universities are also popular for Norwegian students, with about 100 students here in a normal year. This week I will meet 2 of the students who are still here. I will conclude by underlining the high ambitions set for innovation and internationalization by our new Norwegian government, just like you have here in Singapore. And we share to have some of the world's most outstanding, innovative businesses, academic and research institutions. Norway and Singapore have also long experience that our research cooperation can be mutually beneficial, that 2 small countries together can really make a big difference. The Embassy and Innovation Norway, with our dynamic and able science and technology counselor, Kristoffer, are here to facilitate and further expand our research cooperation. The annual Singapore-Norway Science Week is meant to serve as a platform and an anchor event for this objective. With that, I thank all speakers and participants for your contribution to making this happen. I'm looking forward to listen to you, and I wish all of you productive conferences during this week. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Homme, for those encouraging words. We seem to have a bit of technical problem to get Sundli Tveit, Chief Executive Officer of the Research Council, online. We'll try to get hold of her, but we may have to put him in the program a little bit later. But I'd like to share a few words about the Science Week. Research and academic cooperation with Singapore have had high interest for many Norwegian institutes and universities. So before the COVID, Singapore had the 2nd highest number of student exchanges in Asia after China between Norway and the Asian countries. There's no less than 35 MOUs between 12 Norwegian and 13 Singaporean universities and institutions. And as Ambassador Homme mentioned, there are at any time it was before COVID, about more than 100 Singaporean students to Norway and 100 students coming, Norwegian students coming to Singapore. So when I arrived in Singapore in October 2019, just about 2 years ago, and after reconnecting with the major stakeholders here, the National University of Singapore, the Nanyang Technological University, A-STAR, and others, we came up with the concept of the annual Norway-Singapore Science Week as the anchor event for research and academic cooperation between our two countries. Last November was the first inaugural Science Week, and it was planned as a rather grand physical event in Singapore with substantial and high-level delegations from Norway, including presidents and vice presidents from Norwegian University of Science and Technology, NTNU, the Arctic University of Norway, UiT, and Sintef, and others. But of course, COVID struck, and we had to move into the plan B, which was to set up a series of webinars over 2 weeks by the end of October and beginning of November last year. We were addressing at that time the most active and the most relevant sectors, which was including urban development, sustainable urban development, decarbonization, including energy efficiency, carbon capture, utilization and storage, hydrogen, and also on the maritime sector. So we had a total of 9 webinars with 62 presentations, and more than 300 attendees were conducted over those two weeks of webinars. So following that first Science Week, we have had a number of web-based meetings and webinars over the last year to follow up on the ideas, the activities, the relations between the various groups in Singapore and Norway. New areas has been developed, including medicine and medtech, which we will address tomorrow. Aquaculture, food production, on circular economy related to waste and resource management, and other areas as well. Additional institution on both sides has been engaged and shown interest in extending cooperation, including the Norwegian Research Institute's Institute of Energy Technology, or IFE for short, NORSE on the west coast of Norway, and NOFIMA, an institute that specializes in the food and aquaculture value chain. From the Singapore side, we had two new members in the club at Singapore Institute of Technology, one of the leading universities here, and also James Cook University, that is a subsidiary of the Australian university, where there has been quite a good cooperation between University of Tromsø in aquaculture, the aquaculture space. So Singapore and Norway are both knowledge-based economies, and we share the same view that research must be relevant and applicable for societal and business challenges based on mission and problem statements. And it's also imperative that industry engagement with the academic and research cooperation has to be played out. So the thematic focus for the research and academic cooperation we have already established and are looking into is very much in line with the priorities for the business and innovation, where both the Embassy and Innovation Norway are working closely with industry clusters, with innovation facilitators, and with individual companies as well. So we have established over the last year business networks here with the base in Singapore, like the Norway APAC Business Network and Energy, which now includes not less than 52 Norwegian companies in the Southeast Asia and Australia region engaging in the energy space. So we're also working quite closely with the Nordic Innovation House in Singapore to bring startups and growth companies from the Nordic countries to markets in this region, in cooperation with institutions of higher learning and research in Singapore. And finally, also Innovation Norway is about to establish a new physical tech lab in our offices adjacent to the Norwegian Embassy here in Singapore. This tech lab will be kind of a home away from home for startups, growth companies, institutes entering Singapore and Southeast Asia tech markets, including circular economy, urban development, decarbonization, etc. So all in all, we're working quite closely with bringing technology companies, startups, and institutions and universities in together in what we call it the knowledge triangle, to look at this together. This year's issue of Norway-Singapore Science Week is not meant to cover all the areas where we do have collaboration and see collaboration interest, but rather zooming in on some of the most promising areas, including sustainable urban development, which we will face in today, on medtech and digital solution in the health sector tomorrow. We will arrange an Arctic hybrid seminar on Wednesday, and we will round off the Science Week with a seminar on maritime decarbonization, especially maritime electrification, on Friday. And you're all welcome, of course, to listen in on these events. I think I have distributed the invitation and then the registration link. So happy to see you in the rest of the week as well. But today, we're starting the Science Week with the webinar on sustainable urban development. And I have the pleasure of introducing the two co-chairs and moderators of this webinar, Ms. Berit Laanke and Dr. Stephen Wong. So Berit Laanke is Research Director of Sintef Community and heading up the Sintef Group's strategic activities on smart societies. Associate Professor Dr. Stephen Wong is Director of Project at the Office of the Provost at Singapore Institute of Technology. So I will give the word now to Dr. Stephen to take us through the rest of the webinar. Dr. Stephen, please.
Thank you, Professor. Right, a very good morning to our friends and colleagues over in Norway, and a very good afternoon for friends and colleagues here over in Singapore. Hopefully, our friends over in Norway is having better weather than us. If you hear lightning or thunder rumbling behind me, yeah, it's just the weather we have at this time of the year. Right, my name is Stephen. I'm, as mentioned, Associate Professor at the Singapore Institute of Technology, and it's my honor today to be co-chairing and moderating this webinar with my partner in crime, Ms. Berit, who is the Research Director for Sintef Community. Right, this whole topic on sustainable urban development that we are going to talk about in today's webinar is actually something that's very close to my heart, and that's why I'm very glad to be moderating it, be it in building sustainable and happy societies or in developing digital and carbon neutral estates. The reason for this being, if you see this backdrop of mine behind, all right, this is currently at this moment an artist's impression of what hopefully my future office would be like. It's something that's currently in development. All right, Singapore Institute of Technology is a young university in Singapore. We are one of the youngest universities in Singapore, and we actually at this moment have 6 campuses all around Singapore. And we were given a very unique opportunity to build our own campus that hopefully this will be up in 2024 in a district up north in Singapore called the Punggol Digital District. Okay, there's a reason it's up north in Punggol. We call it a digital district because it's a district that we really want to embed smartness into it. And this district actually gives us a unique opportunity to be innovative and to relook at the way we do applied research and applied learning. Because if you look at how the landscaping or how the ecosystem is built in PDD, in the Punggol Digital District, we have Singapore Institute of Technology as the heart, the university as the heart, and we are surrounded by industry estates that's managed by JTC, one of the biggest industry landlord in Singapore. And further out, you see the community, which are all the public housing managed by our Housing Development Board. So if you look at this whole ecosystem of education, industry, and community, all within a smart district, is actually looks like a microcosm of what Singapore aspires to be as a smart nation. This allows us to actually work very closely with our industry partners, okay, with the community, with the public, as well as international collaborators, all right, such as our colleagues over here in Norway. I do hope that after today's webinar, this is just a start of things to come. If there are things that we can work together on, I think we'll very much love to continue this after this webinar. And really, because for an institution like ours, Singapore is a very small place. It's very difficult for governments to actually allocate a piece of land to a university. I think we'll be one of the last few to get that. So we are also bold and innovative about what we want to do in our future campus, which is really to make it a living lab, to open it up for open experiments, applied learning, and applied research. And we want that to be really a platform of which collaborators, partners, researchers from both locally in Singapore as well as globally, including Norway, could actually work together on, try out new innovative things in the real environment and showcase them. An example to this that's related to today's topic will be in SIT, we have a microgrid that we are experimenting on, that we are also opening up as part of the Living Lab for our collaborators and companies to come in to work on new technology and new solutions of how we can get energy and moving towards a carbon neutral solution. And one thing that we can do that is, as a university and the campus, we could take more risk than it could over the street at JTC where it's industry landlord. So this is where we can try out new experimentations, because with research, you will know that not all things go correctly. There will be failures. And I think as a university, the management here is very open to doing risky experiments because, as my president always says, if you bring down the microgrid, he closed down the university for 1 day, most probably the students will be happy. But if you do that across the street over at JTC, most probably they get non-stop complaints and lawsuits. So I think this is really an exciting time for us. And I do hope that today, after we hear a lot of the distinguished speakers and experts that were speaking today, some of these ideas can come to fruition over at the PDD. And so other than just sharing knowledge and notes today, maybe we can also start to seed some collaboration and activities between the two countries so that we can materialize this in PDD or beyond. So without further ado, let me hand over the session to my partner in crime, Ms. Berit, if you can bring us through the next session, and then I'll come back again in the second part of this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Yeah, my name is Berit, and I'm research director in Sintef. I'm very happy to greet you from Trondheim in the mid-Norway this first day of November 2020. It's nice to see several participants and very different participants in this session, both from Norway and Singapore. And Stephen, you said that Singapore is a small country. Yes, it's the same size as an island outside our city here in the mid-Norway. But I think it's so much to learn from Norway. Norway have so much to learn from Singapore. So I think this will be really interesting and a nice session. We have an interesting program. I think I will take you through the program short and look into, so we can look shortly into the topics. First speaker of today is Mr. Tuang Liang, Chief Science and Technology Officer from the Ministry of Sustainability and Environment. And Mr. Tuang will talk about Singapore Green Plan 2030. In our first session after this, we will have 3 speakers. Professor Naomi Hanakata will talk about towards the adaptable and livable urban megapod project. And Professor Naomi is from Architecture School of Design and Environment, National University of Singapore. Next speaker is Annemie, Professor Annemie Wyckmans from the Norwegian University of Science and Technology, Faculty of Architecture and Design. And Annemie will talk about open urban development and citizen engagement. Last speaker of this session is Mr. Petter Kvalvik. He's a Senior Business Developer at Digitalization from the Institute of Energy Technology. Mr. Kvalvik will talk about My Digital City, and this is about regional cluster to drive sustainable society development. Last session is about the digital and carbon neutral districts. And our 2 first speakers are from the Bodø County in Norway, Mr. Kristoffer Larsen Seivåg and Tor Gausemel Kristensen, both project manager in the project of transformation of the city of Bodø in Norway, connected to the relocation of the airport. We look forward to hear about how to use technology to support the development of the carbon neutral city. Next speaker is Mr. Chee, Senior Director from C&W Services. Mr. Ho will talk about application of digital twins for asset management in circular economy. And then last speaker today is Dr. Caroline Cheng from Sintef community here in Norway. She will tell us about technical and non-technical innovations for carbon neutral districts. Each speaker will have the possibility to answer questions, immediate questions, right after their presentation, about 5 minutes. But if there are other questions, we plan to discuss them in the panel discussion in the end of the last session. So then I would like to give the word to Mr. Tuang Lim, and I hope you can take us through the Singapore Green Plan 2030. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Berit. Let me just do a sound check and a slide check so everyone can you confirm that you can see and hear me?
That's great. Good.
Okay, great. Thank you. And a very good morning and afternoon to colleagues in Norway and Singapore. My name is Tuang Liang. I'm the Chief Science and Technology Officer from the Ministry of Sustainability and Environment. And I'm very honored today to be given the opportunity to really open up the sustainable urban development track. And also to be able to share and learn from such a large pool of experts from both Norway and Singapore. And indeed, noting that Oslo is also the European Green Capital in 2019, I'm sure we have Singapore has a lot to learn from Oslo as well. So let me just launch straight into the discussion. I think that I have to warn you that the Singapore Green Plan is quite comprehensive. My details in these slides are quite extensive, but I only have 15 minutes, so I'll cover them very briefly. But I'll leave a link at the end for you to be able to take a look from the website to find further details. The Green Plan was launched in February this year, and it was really the culmination of the work by 5 ministries as shown here on this slide. Just to provide a little bit of context to Singapore's national circumstance, I think that we're a small nation or a low-lying island state of about 720 square kilometers, highly dense in terms of the density and of course very dependent on open economy for our trade. Particularly from a sustainability perspective for renewable energy, for example, very limited land area. Even for sun peak hours, we're about 4.5 hours of sun per day. Lack of geothermal resources and certainly no hydropower. So sometimes we say that we are also renewable energy challenged as a country. So looking at the context compared to say Oslo, we're about 1.5 times the area and about 8 times the population. Our current climate ambition, looking at the 2030 milestone, is to peak our emissions at about 65 million tons of CO2, and by 2050 to be able to halve that to 33, and then we try to reach net zero emissions as soon as viable after that. Now, in order for us to do that, we've set our path on a short and a long-term trajectory, and in particular for the Singapore Green Plan, it is a short to medium-term trajectory up to the year 2030, in which there were 5 main pillars that we were addressing. Energy resetting, sustainable living, building a resilient future for Singapore, improving the whole nature elements in Singapore, and of course, through the drive in sustainability to also develop the green economy. All this would have to be done in strong partnership between the government as well as the citizens and companies in Singapore. Now I'll dive into each of these pillars, starting with the energy reset. And for us, one of the key things was to be able to transform our energy supply. And here we put in 4 switches. Currently, our main energy supply comes from LNG, which forms about 95% of our power source. It is the cleanest form of a fossil fuel, but certainly recognizing the challenges, we are actually moving beyond LNG towards the additional switches. The first switch being the solar, the second switch being solar, which we want to increase our solar deployment. We don't have much wind, and as I mentioned, we don't have hydropower. So solar is really our main organic renewables energy source. But we also see that in order to be able to overcome this, we would have to actually import renewable energy or clean energy from outside Singapore. And there's a reason why we're also setting up many agreements and discussions with regional countries to be able to look at sharing and transferring power from the regional power grids. And of course, in the longer term, we are also keenly aware of the potential for hydrogen. So we have investments both in hydrogen as well as CCUS, noting that LNG is going to be a transition fuel for quite a while, and we want to be able to improve the carbon capture and utilization capabilities in our country. So in order for us to do this for the short to medium term goal by 2030, we'll be promoting sustainable fuels for aviation and maritime in particular. We will be increasing our solar deployments in Singapore. Certainly also looking at increasing the efficiencies of gas-fired power plants. And as I mentioned, looking at clean energy imports. From a buildings perspective, in terms of energy use, we want to be able to raise the building sustainability standards. Here an example, we want to be able to green 80% of our buildings by gross floor area by 2030. And of course, we're also looking at improving our energy efficiencies for even the basic things like water treatment. Here, I mentioned about the reduction in terms of energy consumption of existing towns. HDB stands for the Housing Development Board, essentially the agency responsible for the planning and development of public housing in Singapore. So we'll want to reduce the energy consumption and looking at developing a small part of our western side of Singapore in the Jurong Lake district as a model sustainable mixed-use district. This district is about the size of about 500 hectares. And in terms of energy from a vehicle perspective, we would want to have all new car and taxi registrations to be of cleaner energy models by 2030. And we are in the process of actually installing about 60,000 EV charging points in Singapore. What that means is that from a key targets, as I mentioned, I think it was shown here. I won't go into the details. You can see that a little bit later in the website itself. The second pillar is about sustainable living. And here we are looking at really encouraging water conservation and water efficiency practices, both in household and as well as industries. And we have a national strategy to address e-waste, packaging waste, as well as food waste. In encouraging our citizens to, rather than take personal transport, to be able to shift towards a greater adoption of public transport, we will be expanding our rail networks by about 50% by 2030. We will be using cleaner energy public buses. And of course, we will also be developing facilities that will encourage walking and cycling from across the island. And we recognize that it is important to be able to teach our young and make them aware of the sustainability challenges and as well as what they can do as individual citizens. So we'll build, as part of the plan, we'll build much stronger awareness of the environmental aspects into all our school syllabus. And here, an example of some of the key targets. We want to be able to reduce the waste sent to our landfill by about 20%. And we'll have 75% of our trips during peak hours to be on mass public transport by 2030. And as mentioned, to be able to nurture the next generation to be environmentally conscious. The third pillar that in the Singapore Green Plan is about having a resilient future. And to do that, we are looking at clearly protecting the coastlines, being as I mentioned, a very low-lying island state. We're looking at actually developing models that are not just looking at inland flooding, but also looking at also the coastal flooding and combining them to be able to understand the interactions between the two. And we are building, in some ways, a fund or pool to be able to fund and pay for our coastal and flood protection requirements. Currently, it's estimated that we would have to set aside about 100 billion to be able to armor our country against a rising sea level. And of course, we are also keenly aware of the urban heat island effect as temperature rises, particularly in Singapore, highly populated, highly urban. And we will be addressing these through research as well as partnership with industries and building and district designs to be able to ensure that we have a much cooler living environment in Singapore. And as part of that resilience, recognizing that as we saw through COVID pandemic, in terms of the frailties of global supply chains to shocks, we endeavor to be able to grow local agriculture capabilities in Singapore. Part of that is to be able to grow 30% of our food by 2030. So these are key targets, as I mentioned. And I'll move on to the next pillar. This will be the last pillar, the pillar, well, maybe, apologies, it is the fourth pillar. This is the pillar on city in nature. Singapore started off as a garden city, and then we evolved into a city in a garden. And now we're growing our green ambitions by looking at espousing a vision where we are a city in nature. And to do that, we're expanding our nature park networks by 50% from 2020 to 2030. We're intensifying nature in all our parks and gardens, and also ensuring that the nature elements are deeply embedded within our urban environment. We also want to be able to strengthen the connectivity between the green spaces, a connectivity not just for people to move and be able to enjoy a large, well-connected green expanse, but in some areas also connecting in terms of nature, such that we actually have nature corridors in which animals are able to free to roam from one habitat to another that is in many ways protected from human trespass. So these are the key targets. We are going to develop over 130 hectares of new parks, intending to plant 1 million more trees. Currently, we're about 7 million. So it will be 8 million trees by the time we're done, at least by 2030. And of course, here, as I mentioned, increase in the nature parks by 50%, and to be able to connect and allow a greater accessibility of these parks to our Singaporeans by 2030. Last but not least is in recognition that sustainability does not necessarily come at the expense of the economy or businesses, that we want to be able to grow carbon new capabilities in industries that allow us to be able to benefit economically from the global drive towards sustainability. This we will do so. At the same time, we will also be reviewing our carbon tax in gradual steps, and the first review will be in 2023. We will be looking at greening our industry production processes and energy usage. Here I mentioned Jurong Island, which is a major petrochemical park or island of Singapore, and we were looking at transforming and the industries, as well as changing the ability for them to be able to improve their energy efficiencies in the various industries that they partake in. Interesting element is that we will also looking at a sustainable tourism destination. With one of the most popular destinations in Singapore is the Sentosa Island. It's an offshore island just south of us. And we're looking at actually transforming that into a carbon neutral destination by 2030. And of course, recognizing that Singapore is a financial hub, we're looking at opportunities in which we can actually embark on carbon trading and services as an extension of the hub. I shan't go through this. I think that these are the targets. we are helping our enterprises to adopt sustainability practices through government grants. We want to be a leading center for green finance. And as I mentioned about Jurong Island and Sentosa as a sustainable tourism destination as well. Okay, I've breezed through that. Apologies for the speed, but I thought there was a lot to cover and so little time, and I'd love to be able to chat with you more, either immediately after this or as part of the panel later. And you can certainly find more information on the website as shown here on this slide. Thank you. I end my presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tuang Lim. That was a really good presentation, very intense, and I hope we can dive into on the website a lot of interesting topics, impressive, and I think there are many goals in common with the Norwegian authorities as well. As you said, there are maybe questions right now. We have the possibility to take maybe one question. Please raise your hand if there are someone that want to ask about something. If not, we will proceed. And Krister.
Yeah, I actually posted a question in the chat, and I encourage everyone else to put the questions there as well. So my question is something that I've been pondering a bit about when it comes to Singapore's national determined contribution, basically your pledges to reduce your carbon footprint going forward. You mentioned that you're looking at the peaking of the national emissions by 2030 at about 65 million tons. Today's emission is about 52 million tons. And I'm thinking that all sectors, everyone we talk to in Singapore, the transport sector, the build environment, the industry, the Jurong Island, as you mentioned, they're all working on and implementing means to reduce their carbon footprint. So accumulated, I would think that Singapore's emission would decline from now, but you're still looking at the 25% increase. Could you explain a little bit where you think that increase is going to, it may happen, or is it that just that you're taking a bit of a, how can I say, a careful approach on this NDCs? Please.
Thank you, Prof, for your question. I think that's a very good question. I think to explain that, you would see that actually the country is continuing to grow from the industry's perspective. So right. We're not plateauing in terms of growth. So there will be new industries, new setups coming in. In particular, we have a lot of interest in terms of many of the digital companies to invest in Singapore with the setting up data centers to be able to process a lot of information. Yeah. But of course, you know that data centers are generally quite energy intensive as well. About 40% of their, unfortunately, 40% of their power is actually just used for cooling. But of course, beyond just data centers, there are other industries that are continuing to invest in Singapore. So what we see here is that as new industries come in, their carbon footprints as per industry and per company will reduce because they will be gradually implementing more and more of the sustainable systems capabilities. So for example, even for the data centers, they're striving towards very high levels of sustainability in terms of renewable energy use, in terms of efficiencies in cooling. So we'll see that as they grow, that they will begin to in some ways slow down in terms of the carbon growth. And that is why, based on our calculations, that we think that by 2030, this would slow down to a point where we will reach that peak, beyond which then the new technologies with implementation, with both, I think, a reduction in implementation costs would basically accelerate the reduction in carbon and allowing us to be able to then go on a downhill trajectory as far as carbon emissions after 2030.
Thank you. That explained a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think then we proceed. I think actually we have Mari Sundli Tveit from the Research Council from Norway together with us now. Is that so, Mari?
That is so.
Thank you. Then you can. I'm glad to welcome you to this session, and I hope that you can say some words to us now. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that opportunity, and my sincere apologies for joining you late this morning. Dear Ambassador, dear distinguished guests and colleagues, it's a pleasure being here. This conference obviously is it's a very important arena, important meeting point for us. It provides the opportunities that we need for professionals to share industry challenges and experiences, and also for the members of the research community and technology developers to meet up, share their expertise, technological solutions, and everything that we, between our two countries, share, that we can bring together for new successes in the future. And I think the conference really highlights those opportunities, and is a very efficient arena for us to work on. And I think the presentation that we just listened to, that was a perfect example of that. So I'm not going to take a lot of your time. I just it's a pleasure for me to just greet and say hello. Well, I don't know if we can say in person through the screens, but at least seeing you like this. And then I wish everyone the very best for this conference, and I'm looking forward to the future cooperation with you all. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mari. That was nice to have you with us here from the Research Council from Norway. Now we'll proceed in our program, and I think I will give the word to Steven to proceed to the next part of the program.
Right. Thank you. So maybe what we'll do is let's go on to the next speakers that we will have for the program. Right. So next up, actually, we have Prof. Annie, who was from the Faculty of Architecture and Design at Norwegian University of Science and Technology, to actually share with us the open urban development and how do you engage citizens. So could I pass this to Prof. Anne, please?
Sorry, I'm a bit confused. I thought the program. I thought my colleague would present first, but if you.
Oh, my apologies. I got the.
Yes.
I'm just so excited to hear from you, but not that I'm not excited to hear from Naomi. So maybe I'll get. Sorry. Yes. Prof. Naomi Hanakata from the Architecture School of Design and Environment from our National University of Singapore. My apologies. I will just skip through that. Yeah. So maybe I can get you to share about the towards adaptable and livable urban mega projects with us. Then we'll go to Prof. Anne after that. I think we can't hear you, Naomi. Yeah, I think you're still.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, we can hear you now. It's kind of broken. The audio is not coming through cleanly, though.
Oh, it was fine a minute ago. Okay, let me disconnect again. This one. Can you hear me?
Yes, now it's fine.
Oof.
My apologies. I must have upsetted your technology.
No worries. Yeah. Let me also quickly try if the screen share is working now. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Yes,
I think it's still appearing.
Yeah.
Yes, we have it.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. Thank you so much for letting me be part of the session and starting this this particular session on sustainable and happy cities, and I'm excited to share my take on this through the lens of mega projects, urban mega projects, more specifically to adaptable and livable urban mega projects as drivers of sustainable and development of our cities tomorrow. So what I want to do with you is quickly share with you why I think it's interesting to look at urban mega projects today. So looking at what I exactly mean by urban mega projects and how I believe that these projects, these kind of mega projects, can be drivers of urban development, and specifically of inclusive and adaptive urban development. So what are urban mega projects? I mean, I'm sure many of you have an idea already. I'll share some case studies in a second. But basically what I'm thinking of are comprehensively planned urban development projects following a specific urban planning vision. They're usually mixed use and they form a new centrality within a city. And what is also quite critical is the fact that they are commonly governed by a single authority, a central governing body, which is in a way key difference to other. Now, they also usually carry an iconic function within the city, and with that they really have the capacity to change the image of the city. And to do so, they usually involve not just international funding and capital, but also international developers, architects, and of course with that also interests from various geographies. It goes without saying they absorb a lot of money. So commonly they're usually heavily criticized, these kind of projects, but me as an urban planner and researcher, I was thinking, okay, there is no way around these kind of projects. In fact, we can see in this graph here that their number has been increasing quite drastically over the recent decades, not just in number, but also in size. So there's no way around these projects. So how can we develop an approach towards these projects that allows us to leverage on such projects for more adaptable and livable urban environments? And so I'll share a little bit of that research outcome with you today. Some of the case studies that I've been looking at, you can see here, from Marunouchi in Tokyo to the famous skyline of Shanghai, represented through Luzajui in Pudong, but also the under construction West Kowloon project. And of course also Marina Bay area is a project that falls into this category. And then some projects in Europe, Hafen City in Hamburg, Germany. Maybe some of you know, I'm sure Paris La Défense is familiar to most of you, but also 22 Ed in Barcelona and King's Cross in London. All of them have, as I mentioned earlier, very mixed programs. But what you can see here also in the satellite images, they usually form very distinctively different urban patterns, distinctively different to the surrounding established urban fabric of the city in which they're embedded in. That comes with a lot of problems, also kind of the creation of new interurban borders that needs to be considered in the planning process. And you can see here they also have very distinct architectural elements. And one of the key aspects I mentioned is their specific governing pattern around one central body that is not just in charge of the conception of such projects, but then usually also in charge of the implementation as well as the management once the project is quote-unquote completed. We see here in the timeline of just these few projects I mentioned that there is a certain trend towards shorter and shorter development cycles, which I believe is very tricky. Berit also comes with a lot of challenges. And what I want to highlight here is kind of two different approaches that we can see, or at the extreme end, two different approaches that we can see in the development of such projects. Whereas in one plotted here in this kind of straight line is usually the attempt to fix everything in the early conception, particularly the design stage, regarding the implementation, operation, implication process. So the design, the moment of design usually determines exactly how the future of the project, even though these projects, as you saw on the timeline, usually take 20, 30, 40, if not 50 years to develop. Everything is being kind of determined, particularly when it comes to spatial and programmatic functions. On the other end of that scope, we have a much more kind of open-ended design approach, planning approach that leaves space for much more eventualities, possibilities, kind of acknowledging that we cannot anticipate everything that is going to happen in 20, 30, 40 or 50 years from now. But even more so, we have to plan in a certain adaptive capacity into these projects, which, you know, creates, if you will, multiple scenarios or futures for these projects in the far future. So this is kind of the scope between fixed and adaptive schemes that many of these big projects are oscillating between. The projects that I've mentioned so far can be kind of lined up like this. So La Défense has had from the very beginning a very fixed, determined layout, program, and spatial distribution regarding everything within La Défense, whereas 22@has a much more open approach. I'll give you an example in a minute. Here, between this kind of design approach and the implication these projects have, implication in terms of how much they're interacting with the surrounding urban environment, how much they're triggering new developments around the project sites, how much they're kind of emphasizing to be, you know, distinctly different, or they're kind of really seeking the interaction, not just with spaces and infrastructures that are already existent, but of course also with the people, residents that live around these projects. So Barcelona, 22@ in Barcelona is an example of an extremely open and flexible, and with that also extremely adaptive planning scheme, which entailed no 2D master plan from the beginning whatsoever, but much more of a regulatory process that each development proposal had to go through and get approved by multiple councils, including dedicated councils for the 22@ project, but also within the city of Barcelona, leading to a extremely high variety of spaces, program combinations, and also atmospheres and qualities within the area. Another project that is has a slightly different but also very interesting open approach is the Hafen City Hamburg in Germany. Maybe some of you know. It's the site with also the Elbphilharmonie in between the old city center and the port of Hamburg. And the project was started in 2000 and is targeted for completion by 2030, so over 30 years. But while there was a plan at the very beginning, a master plan, it never really kind of attempted to determine what exactly is going to happen in 2020, 2025, but designated areas. You can see here in the plan 10 areas that would be developed subsequently, and only the master plan at the very beginning only outlined very basic functions in terms of infrastructures, but also qualitative functions within the districts that would then further be specified in smaller design competition much closer, 2 years, 3 years prior to the begin of the development of the area. If we are trying to go towards more adaptable and livable urban mega projects, I think key planning parameters are working with spatial qualities. So while it's not key to determine physical aspects of a project so much, it's key to determine spatial qualities as well as programmatic qualities. Work with open spaces from the very beginning. So even within areas that might only start development in 10 or 20 years from now, making open spaces accessible and continuous throughout the site and connecting to the existing urban fabric, I believe is key. Working with activators or catalysts, as I also call them, and determining those in the very beginning for the entire development is critical. And then really thinking of a master plan, not so much as a 2D scheme, but really as a 4-dimensional tool that has to be conceived as, you know, a continuously dynamic way to present and project what is going to happen within a project. Again, the reason why I think it's important to look at these projects in the context of sustainable and livable, or if you will, happy urban environments. I think it's key to look at these projects because of their size, they have an they usually form an extremely important new centrality within the cities, as you could also see from the case studies and references I quickly fleshed out. But it's also extremely important to consider that because of their size and their cohesiveness, meaning that they're planned by one authority, carried out and managed by one authority, they very easily create new borders within a city. And with that, they also have the potential to, because of that cohesiveness, they also have the potential to in many ways become model projects. I mean, we also know that of Marina Bay area in many cases, it's served as a reference, as a aspiration for other cities to develop a similar project. So this is always something we have to be very much aware of. And if successful, they always have the potential to function as a catalyst themselves for future development in the city. What I think as planners, what we have to do is really take these projects as testbeds for new urban planning practices, to explore a more diversified planning approach beyond the 2-dimensional master plan. Because as we can see also already from these examples, projects of that size and scale have to become more diverse in order to survive, and recent 2 years have only highlighted that need. And these projects really have the capacity to change a power balance within the city that's can be well illustrated with the Hafen city, who's kind of become a competitor in many ways to the existing city center. But we also always have to keep in mind that these projects still largely depend on very special circumstances and do not normally reflect the norm of urban development practice within a city or country, because they are given very special incentives carried out under very exceptional circumstances. And with that, we also always have to keep in mind that because of the initially mentioned global character, due to international capital investment as well as stakeholders, these projects also often create conflicts between local interests and global interests. So this was just a quick flesh out of why I think it's important to look at these projects not just as a kind of pain in the eye or pain in the city in many ways, but really try to look at them as drivers for potential and innovation within the city they're embedded in. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Naomi. Thank you for your sharing. I mean, and a very pretty picture of our Marina Bay Sands there. Right, it's unfortunate we don't have sufficient time for questions now for this particular session. But what we can do is, if you have any questions, we can put that to the panel discussion that will happen later in the afternoon after we have finished the talks. So right now, if I could go back to Prof and to talk to us about this open urban development, how you get the citizens to engage, because as this session is really about the drivers for a happy society, so you don't want to create mega projects and then upset everybody around the place. So Prof Ann, please.
Yes, thank you. And in a way, actually, the order of the of the presentations is really good. I think Naomi already introduced quite a lot of aspects of work that we have in common. So I can go more in detail then on like how do we engage different stakeholders, citizens, professionals to do this, because it's very nice to have the big ambitions. We also heard that in the Green Plan of Singapore. But the problem is, of course, always how do you do this in practice? How do you get it done? And I want to take the opportunity to very briefly show you a European framework that we are developing. This is for positive energy districts, so like neighborhoods that generate more energy than they consume. But it's not just about the energy and the climate neutrality, it's about making them inclusive and beautiful and resilient and sustainable, you know, all of these things together. And we've been working with quite a lot of European, but also some global initiatives in order to try to get to one understanding of what this could be. And I just want to show it to you in case you might be interested also in working with us on this. Let's see. Yes, we've been working on that for quite some time. Actually, we started in 2016 already. Where we thought, well, yes, we want to develop, you know, these ambitious districts that generate more energy than they consume, that are climate neutral. But we know that in order to be able to do this, and in order for people to actually want to live there and to want to work there, we are going to have to work both with a technological perspective, but also the spatial one, regulatory, financing, social, economic, environmental, and everything included. And it took us 2 years then to make this plan, this European Strategic Energy Technology Plan that was launched in 2018. And then, you know, we thought, okay, fine, now everyone is going to work on this. Everyone also being including then the Urban Europe Joint Programming Initiative, and then a lot of big like European constellations, also the European Energy Research Alliance, where I'm leading a program on smart cities. And we saw that it actually was not very easy. So because what very often happens is that we say, okay, we need to do all of these things, but let's do the technology part first, because that's the one we know, it's easy to measure, and then we do the rest afterwards. Or we divide into, here's the technological ones and here's the non-technological ones, or, oh, these are the support measures, or these are qualitative. And so automatically you don't get an integrated approach, but it falls apart into different bits and pieces, which then are very difficult to put together. And people also feel then that, for example, the social and even the economic perspective somehow seems to be worth less than the technological one. So we wanted to avoid that. And we are supported in this approach then also by two big European strategies that were launched last year. The first one is, of course, this mission to achieve 100 climate neutral cities by 2030, and not just climate neutral, but socially innovative, so by and with and for citizens. And of course, also not just 100 cities, you know, ideally all the 100,000 local authorities that we have in Europe. And in addition, another initiative was launched called the New European Bauhaus, saying that this clean energy transition, this shift towards climate neutrality, should be beautiful and sustainable and inclusive. So it is not enough to show how it can be done technologically. You need to have this integrated approach. You need also to include, as we saw, so in the Green Plan and what Naomi presented, nature needs to be involved, so nature-based solutions. You need a sense of belonging. You need to work with the citizens. You need to make communities. You need to make sure to show how industry can be involved, etc. And all of these things together. Now, we're not going to go in detail on this, but just to give you a brief idea, we work together with a lot of different European organizations then, and also a global IEA and International Energy Agency annex, on how do we put then all of these different quantitative and qualitative things together, because they're not always easy to measure, they're not easy to combine. And of course, this is just still a work in progress. So if you have anything that could contribute to this, we'd be more than happy to talk to anyone that can do this. So if you look at the left-hand side, so it's again not just about a technological or a non-technological approach, but it's about the whole diversity of the natural resources, the infrastructures, the competency, the culture, regulation, aesthetics, governance principles, everything together. And of course, with a possibility for local adaptation. If you have heritage buildings, for example, or you have differences in local climate, or you have an area that has a difficult economic situation, you should be able to adapt it there. And of course, this is going to take quite some time to operationalize in practice, but we see that this is something that actually gives a lot of cities and communities hope that, yes, this is something we can do. We might not be part of those, big lighthouse cities that can just push the technology, but we do have very good local community opportunities. We have heritage that we want to protect, and maybe combining heritage and energy ambitions could be something that is giving us an opportunity to operationalize this. So this is what we are going to work on quite intensively now for at least 4 years more, and probably more than that. And ideally then not just in Europe, but also together with you. I'll just give a few examples of some of the things we're doing in one of our lighthouse projects in Positive City Exchange. First, just a quick recap. I already mentioned this. What often happens is, even if you say that you're going to look at everything together, very often, the physical things, the energy, the transport, is that what gets taken first, and everything else that we said was important, the senses, the well-being, the values, that gets pushed aside for later. But in practice, it is, if you can reach people through values and through this well-being, then you will get people on board to do the physical things. So we shouldn't divide them. And we should also make sure that all of these intentions don't just get mentioned in a nice program or a strategy, but that they get taken on in the whole process of the development. Because what again often happens is there's a very high ambition in the beginning, and then when resources and capacity start to dwindle, then they disappear, and you get only the technical one. So we want to make sure it gets included in the whole process. So a few examples from Positive City Exchange, where we work with 7 European cities and then 23 industry partners, and then 2 universities, including NTNU, which is leading this project. Again, we wanted to do this integrated approach, everything together. And we are doing this kind of just seeing, okay, which areas do we have? For example, in Trondheim on the left-hand side, we have this harbor area. Of course, smaller than a Hamburg Hafen City or so, but similar, with large commercial buildings or public buildings, and few owners and property developers. And then in Limerick, on the right-hand side, we have a heritage Georgian district with individual housing owners, and of course, then buildings that actually are protected. So they are so protected that they are currently, well, they're not, sometimes not even in use, because, you know, you can't do anything with them, you can't upgrade them. So we found a way to link the energy ambitions with the upgrading, getting the owners involved and doing something positive for everyone there. So it's an approach that's being tested in very different types of areas. Of course, it also means that, as regulations were already mentioned before, it means that very often we have to test something, for example, in terms of sector coupling between thermal and electric, between like vehicle to grid chargers, battery storage, selling and buying energy from each other. Very often that is not allowed, for example, in Norway, so, but also in the rest of Europe. And so it means we need a very good dialogue with the authorities, and of course with the commercial partners involved, in order to be able to test some of these aspects. And then when we've tested them, to see how they could be embedded in regulations afterwards. We are doing this not just in Norway. In Norway, we pulled together a lot of actors and we made a letter to the government saying that, look, based on our experience, these are the concrete things that need to be changed. And there will be then, they will come to visit, there will be a dialogue to see what we can do. But we're also doing this as a European initiative. So hopefully in the next time we'll be able to show you a little bit what we've achieved there. Citizen innovation. So how do you get citizens involved? From very different groups, also young people, and this is, again, it's a mixture of, we have the digital twins, so where people can of course look at simulations of what would happen with their house, what would happen with their neighborhood, but then also with a very local site where people can meet, where they can also look at physical models, where they can get engaged in also participatory funding, for example, so how to use specific budgets, what the next generation would want from this development, etc. We also picked out positive energy champions, so specific citizens that wanted to do more. And then, of course, we started with 20, but we hope that this is going to spread. And we asked these people, so they want to do something, they want to develop something, whether it's an air quality sensor or a better school bus trajectory, something like this. And so they just got going and they got support from us in terms of design, a little bit of seed funding in order to make that happen. And then we feed that back in the project. So we are using citizens as innovators. All of this we pulled together into then a municipal strategy. So this is from Trondheim. It links not just as a project, but across everything the municipality does, both within the municipality and then towards the United for Smart Sustainable Cities, building a local ecosystems with any actor that would want to be involved, from investors, companies, universities and research, civic organizations. So how do you pull that together so you can be very active towards new solutions? And of course, we're not just going to do that in the areas we already work with, but see how we can use this in other areas of the city as well, and in other cities. And a very last thing, I was kind of thinking that maybe Berit would have introduced it, but we see that in order to be able to do these things, we're going to need a lot of capacity. We need a lot of established researchers involved, but also younger people to be trained and mentored to be able to take these roles, to work with pilots, to set up these constellations, to support citizens, to get funding, to work with investors, regulatory authorities to make this happen. So we set up a center, a Gemini Center on climate neutral and socially innovative cities to support all of these ambitions and this work, both in Norway and abroad. And so again, hopefully then this is something that is useful for you as well. And we could build on this going forward. So from Sintef, it is Berit Laanke that is the co-director. and from NTNU, it's myself. And so we really want to be able to build this capacity to be engaged in more areas, more pilots, and make sure that this can spread across the world. So if you want to get involved, contact us and we can discuss it further. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the sharing. This is very exciting. And actually, whilst you were speaking, I was taking a lot of notes because I was trying to categorize as many of these efforts as possible in our Punggol Digital District. I think getting the citizens involved and looking at open problem statements that people not only put up the problems that they have, but the citizens as well as the people who are living around it provide the solutions as well. That's the greatest means of getting buy-in. I think that ties in very nicely to the next talk that we have on my digital city, on the regional cluster to drive a sustainable society development by Mr. Petter, the Senior Business Developer Digitization Institute of Energy Technology. I think that's going to be very, very interesting as well, seeing how you can actually, at the end of the day, in the district, actually what is most important is, of course, the citizens, and how then do you get them involved in this whole process. So, Peter, please.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Yeah. So thank you very much for the introduction. I'm the program manager for this fairly new initiative here in a small city of Norway called Halden. This initiative was shaped during the pandemic, and it was to join regional forces for working with the digital transition of the society. And we have this slogan, quality of life by and for the citizens. So of course, this is something for the citizens. And we are a pentahelix consortium consisting of a research organization, academia, the local municipality, and of course, startups and citizens. And what we would like to see is that the technology blends into the city environment and becomes some kind of asset for the city and the citizens. So the focus here is very democratic. And we would like to see the citizens and the employees in the municipality become entrepreneurs and innovators and so on throughout this program. I'm working for Institute for Energy Technology, so I'm representing this initiative from that company, and we are an independent Norwegian research institute founded back in 1948. And we are also hosting this international OECD Halden Reactor project program here in Halden. And I'm belonging to the research division Digital Systems. So I have some things on the agenda for today, a little bit about the consortium. Then I will tell you a little bit about our focus on Horizon Europe's climate neutral and smart cities mission that has already been mentioned. And I will emphasize on a couple of things in the program. And the first thing is the data-driven innovation capacities that we are trying to build with a case. And of course, the use of AI in the program. So I think that will be the agenda for today. So a little bit about this program then. We have a vision, and that is that my digital city will contribute to sustainable and future-oriented societal development. Research and innovation in collaboration with the citizens will provide a digital transformation for the benefit of society. And the organizations involved here are, of course, the local municipality. They are a quite innovative, small municipality in Norway, and they have actually received some prizes as well internationally for their effort on smart city transformation. Then we have the Research Institute for Energy Technology that I belong to. The local university college is on board here, and they are establishing this new program as well, called the Digital Society. We have eSmart Systems on board, and eSmart Systems is a leading provider of AI solutions for inspection and maintenance of critical infrastructure, and they're also located in Austin, USA. And we have another research institute in this small town as well, called Smart Innovation Norway. They have been quite successful on EU proposals and running EU projects, so we are quite happy to have this consortium. And of course, we have a lot of small businesses and startups as well that will participate in this program. So we have agreed upon some focus areas, and I have not time to go into all of them, but I can start up with citizen engagement because this has been a topic in the previous presentations. So we are also emphasizing a lot on the citizens here, engage them in workshops, in projects, and I will come back to pilots. But we are using, for example, augmented reality here for city planning. So, for example, to have a dialogue with young people here, we are using this kind of technology to plan, for example, sports facilities or playgrounds and so on throughout the city. Another thing here is that we have a project that I will come back to. We will implement new digital water meters in the households, and of course we will involve the citizens in the requirement specification so that they can have their idea about this, and also we need to collect their views on this kind of technology. And we have 3 strategic goals. One of them is to create new sustainable services for the citizens. The other one is about creating a digital infrastructure for the city with a holistic view. And as part of this, we will create a data reservoir for data sharing. And the third strategic goal here is about creating new jobs, of course, for the region. So this is my digital city in a nutshell. And of course, we are focusing on Horizon Europe in this program and a new mission, climate neutral and smart cities. And I've just picked 4 areas that we are now really targeting. The first one is decarbonization strategies, looking into energy efficient buildings, mobility, renewables, water supply, and so on. The other one is quality of life. And here you have all the citizen focus. And of course, citizen engagement, sharing economy, transparency in processes, digital exclusion problems, new jobs, privacy, and new citizen services. Then we are really emphasizing on the digital infrastructure and data sovereignty as part of aligning with the European digital single market. And we are really now trying to get the municipality and the citizens and the companies engaged in viewing data as an asset. So being able to have consent services here for using the data, fair value creation from data, creating this data reservoir that I was mentioning. I will go into a very short introduction to that. And using reference architectures developed in the European Union like GaiaX and international data spaces as part of this. The fourth area is resilience, and of course we need to pay attention for resilience for the electricity supply, the water supply, the environment around the city, the citizens, the built environment, and of course the digital infrastructure. So this is our focus related to the European Union on smart cities. So a little bit about data-driven innovation. So what we see now is a lot of different areas for innovating using data. And this is just some of them that we are involved in Halden. So we need to have some kind of holistic view on all of this. And today the biggest problem is that most of the data are stored in silos and we are not able to share them and drive this innovation. So what we're working on right now is to establish this layer of data governance to make sure that we have the procedures and the laws and regulations and everything related to data sharing and promote data-driven innovation. So we are working on a pre-project now for setting up a data governance model for the city. Hopefully we'll pilot this next year. And the other project that we're working on now is a smart data or a smart inventory of digital resources in the city so that we are able to get an overview of all these resources. And it's more than data, it's algorithms, it's visualizations, it's systems. So this is 2 of the projects. And I think also in the long term, we are trying to establish this city plan for data so that we can plan and engage the citizen and the politicians in this kind of approach. So then I will dive into just one of the areas here, and that is the digital water use case. So what we are trying to do now is to gather data from the water supply system. Today there's a lot of sensor data from pump station and so on throughout the city. But in Halden, we are going to implement these new digital water meters as part of this project. And of course, we need citizen engagement here, as I mentioned. We need to get them on board, and we need to get their opinion about this. But we will also like to collect data from other sources like social media, weather forecasts, and other legacy systems that are related to the water supply. So what we are trying to accomplish then is to collect all of the data into some kind of data market. And of course, this data market could, on the left-hand side, there could be changed to mobility or air quality or any of the other areas that I showed on the previous slide. But we will start up with this water market. And what we would like to achieve here is to make this data available for many different stakeholders. For example, the politicians or the engineers in the municipality or in the educational systems, or for the citizens, startups, or for example, insurance company. This is just some of the stakeholders. So we are now working on defining this kind of reference architecture for both the data market and the toolbox here, to be able to visualize, to run machine learning, to run some data engineering processes and so on. And what we would like to accomplish then is innovation based on this data market. So this is just some examples, and I don't have time to go through all of them, but we would like to, for example, provide new health services. So with the new digital water meters, we can detect abnormal behaviors of, for example, elderly living at home, so that we can notify the family or the health service in the municipality if something is not all right there. Another thing is that a lot of the drinking water in the municipality is leaking out. This is a problem across the municipalities in Norway. So we will use this data to try to detect water leakages across the city. We will like to provide high quality data sets from this market. And of course, we are trying to set up a digital twin to simulate different scenarios related to water supply. So this is just some examples. And of course, the problems related or the challenges related to data governance needs to be in place here. So we'll use this use case for addressing this kind of issue. So AI is another important focus area for my digital city. And there's an emphasis on AI in all the companies or organizations involved. So we have established this AI clinic for companies to get there and get help for problems, or to get insights, or to get some kind of motivation for starting up with AI. We have also this AI cluster with a lot of companies and organizations in Norway involved for having workshops, seminars, webinars, and so on. We have the academic conference on AI. And we have this international conference on applied AI this May in 2022. So what we are looking into then in the My Digital City is, of course, solving problems of societal needs in the municipality and the city. Data is an important part of this, algorithms, the soft infrastructure like data governance, ethical frameworks, and so on. The hard infrastructure, the data management capabilities, the AI competency and skills, and this is more than just core the computer science and data science capabilities. It's also philosophy, ethics, statistics, and so on. We need to onboard the domain knowledge here, like the people working within, for example, this water supply system. We need their competency on board. We need the innovative mindset in the municipality to be able to do this. And of course, we need to be human-centric about all of this. So preserving ethical frameworks here is quite important. So I'll just end up by showing you some of the areas that we are looking into now within AI. So thank you very much for listening in to our approach for digital transformation of the society.
Thank you so much for the sharing. Of course, this I think is just a very small snapshot of the entirety of the project. I think each one of these areas, it could be a section by itself. So thank you for the sharing. I think this does give a very great overview. For this session, actually, we were really talking about the drivers for the development of a sustainable and happy societies. And to just do a quick summary, actually, we have seen how you can create mega big projects, mega showcases, where it become iconic for a city and how things evolve around that. And we have seen how you can create positive energies and by looking at things not just in silos, but really holistically across all the groups, and how do you have champions and engage the citizens. And I think lastly, if we look at the digital arena, there's a lot of things that can be done in how you can actually utilize data, utilize technology, but not forgetting, actually, I think if you look at all the 3 talks, it's really not just about the technology or building buildings or building fanciful estates. It's in silo. It's about how do you bring all this together so that you actually fulfill a particular purpose. And I'll just leave a parting thought to the speakers, and maybe this is something we can discuss in the panel later as well, is whilst we are very mindful in the local arena not to create silos, getting the people who are developing together with the real estate owners, together with the citizens, to co-create both problem statements as well as solutions, but also how do we then move this further to not have silos within a local community, but looking at how we can actually have global collaborations such as those that we will have today between Singapore and Norway. Right. So with that, maybe I'll pass the session to Berit to run through us with the next session.
Thank you, Stephen. This last session with the presentations, we have 3 presentations, and we will drop into the city of Bodø. We will hear about digital twins and also about innovations. So then first speakers, we have 2 speakers from Norway connected to Bodø. They will talk to us about the transformation of the city of Bodø connected to this relocation of the airport. And we have Kristoffer Larsen Seivåg and Gausemel Kristensen, both connected to the Bodø County of Norway. So Kristoffer and Tor, let's hear about Bodø.
Yes, hello everyone. Hope you can hear me well. Thank you so much for the invitation to speak to you again this year. And last year we focused on more on the mobility and transport projects, and also we dive into the citizen engagement. This year we will focus more on the other projects and what we work on to develop and to plan the carbon neutral city areas in the future. So I will first, as an urban planner, I will just give you a short recap for last year of the situation in Bodø, and Tor will introduce himself in a couple of minutes. So I just have to, hope you can see my presentation right now. Good. Yes, so a quick introduction. I'm also on behalf of Rakel Hunstad, which is our R&D coordinator in our municipality, dive into some of the projects we are working on. But first of all, we have the situation in Bodø. Here you can see the Bodø Peninsula and the urban areas, the main urban areas. And you can also see that we have a very large area in the south here is closed for the public, which is the NATO airbase and the civil airport. So the situation is that this airbase will be closed down this year, and we will start relocating our civil airport to the south, and that opens a huge area for further urban development close to our existing city areas, and that maybe one day the new airport will give space for a very large area for further urban development. So the new airport will be ready about 2027, 2028, and then we can start the urban development of this new areas which we are giving opportunity to develop. Here we can.
Kristoffer, we don't see your presentation in the presentation mode. It's,
oh, okay. Sorry.
If you could just flip it over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it better now?
We still see your next slide as well.
All right. Okay. Sorry about that. I try sharing you with you again. Okay. Right. Just a minute. Is it better now?
Actually, if you can just go to the top, there's one that you can switch your displays.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, correct. Just change. Yeah. Yeah. That should bring it, I hope. Oh, okay. Yours does not. So
I tried it again. Sorry. I don't know why it's different. Should we just continue maybe?
If everybody is fine with this.
I'm sorry. I don't know what's happening. I can just okay. I try one more time, and so it's important that you can see the whole picture.
Actually, could I suggest? Yeah, that would be good.
Sometimes it's problem with when you connect a screen.
Yeah. You project first. Then after that, before you share, so you project, and then when you are sharing, you choose the PowerPoint presentation, the full screen.
Yes.
Yeah,
Better now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay. Yes. So this is the Bodø and the regional largest development project to this date, maybe in Norway. It's in fact two projects, location of the airport in Bodø to ensure access to areas of urban development and to plan and facilitate for urban development. It's also a large, important transport and communication project, which will give the region access to state-of-the-art, modern and efficient new airport, of course. But it's first and foremost an urban development project for the city and the region. So the climate, energy, and environmental ambitions are high. We aim for this to be a lighthouse project for national and international significance, and also a model of how we should plan and develop cities for the future in Norway. So you can see a short, a little overview of our municipal master plan, which we are working on now, and you can see how we suggest to develop the area into you can see the orange and the purple areas where the new urban areas will be developed. I can also see the green areas there, and also suggesting new harbor areas in the west. The urban area will fulfill very high climate energy ambitions so that we can take steps into a low emission society. The municipality's ambitions through the project is that the first neighbor in the new area will be planned and developed as a zero emission neighborhood and be a leader in how we can build the low emission society for the future. The new district area will further develop in line with the UN's sustainability goals, the Paris Agreement, and national as well as municipal goals within the climate, energy, biodiversity, as well as the circular business models with all shall be used as a basis. So we also have worked out an environmental program for this new urban area. So this is to clarify all ambitions and objectives within the climate and environmental issues in all stages of development. And it's also based on goals and guidelines for the municipal master plan for a new urban area. And the main themes here are energy, circularity, waste, material use, mass management, biodiversity, and climate adaptation. And we also worked out goals and measures for each stream. This has also been linked to the regulations in the municipal master plan, and further requirements are set for a separate environmental program for each zoning plan in this urban area. I mentioned this shortly last year. Bodø municipality is a partner and pilot city in the research center on zero emission neighborhoods. So the main objective in this research center is to develop competitive products and solutions that will lead to the realization of sustainable neighborhoods. These neighborhoods shall all have, of course, zero emissions of greenhouse gases and a link to their production, operation, and transformation, and that's including the production and transport of materials, for instance. This requires a very high degree of technological innovation. We work in this project. We work closely together with the researchers in the center as well as public and industry partners. We are one of 9 pilot cities which are spread all over Norway. Our ambition is that the first developments in the new urban area will be planned and developed as a zero-emission neighborhood, as I mentioned, and we focus on what the zero-emission neighborhood implies for urban planning and our planning procedures, as well as the construction of building and areas. That such are both merely sustainable, but that they also facilitate for high quality of life. We have also target effort directed towards emissions-free construction sites. So this goes far beyond energy efficiency. So this is about planning and development with the area perspective at the core, and it's important for early planning and holistic approach to the building stock, construction sites, energy, ICT, mobility systems, and mobility as a service. And focus on the people that will work in these areas. As a pilot city in the Zero Emission Neighborhood project, we have a particular focus on how to develop energy systems for the future, security of supply and a flexible environmental friendly energy supply is at the core. A low carbon society requires that our buildings, mobility systems and energy systems is integrated. We want, through the planning, facilitate for new renewable energy production at local level, energy storage, the sharing of energy within an area, optimal use of thermal and electric energy. And this way we will be able to use our energy resources more efficiently. So this is important that there is currently a strong drive for electrification of all sectors of the economy, in particular mobility and industry. So learning, knowledge and competence building are absolutely very central in this to succeed in the transition into a low emission society and a circular economy, and to realize our climate, energy and environmental ambitions. Here are some examples of how we work in different areas. As I mentioned, the municipal master plan for the new urban areas are closely connected to the ZEN project. And we also have carried out energy system analysis in a development area in an existing city. We use the municipality's own projects to study future-oriented energy systems, and we see that good projects and studies leads to new projects. And we also have, for instance, this Flexinor project, which is a very exciting project about new green business models. And we also use the policy instruments actively to carry out the project. Right. Then I will give the word to Tor, so you can take it away.
Hello. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we do.
Yes, okay, perfect. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're located. From Bodø, I'm here in the City Hall, and I'm thankful for the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Gausemel Kristensen. I'm a project manager here in the municipality of Bodø. Most of my time I used at a project called City Loops, that is a Horizon 2020 funded project located in 7 different cities in EU. We have different projects, but we have the same goal, and that is to use technology and innovation for sustainability and circularity. It's divided in 3 phases: the R&D phase, the demonstration phase, and the replication phase. And the project at which we want to live out this research and demonstration, these tools that we're making in this project, is the New City, New Airport project that Kristoffer was talking about. Many of the things that we do is actually comparable to the things that IFE with Petter is doing, so I would love to hear more about that sometime. Petter, maybe we should team up sometime. In City Loops, we're making 17 different tools, and we're using different types of technologies to develop these tools. I'm going to quickly demonstrate to you a 3D GIS-based visualization tool for monitoring and planning, and maybe also we can touch into stakeholder engagement platform that we're working on. So I'm just going to jump right into the digital twin that we are using and further developing in Bodø. I know that maybe we're a little bit behind schedule now, so Bente or Stephen, just let me know when you feel that I've exceeded my delegated time. Okay, so I'm actually flying around live. Can you see me flying around now? Can someone confirm that?
Yes, we do.
Good. So this is a digital twin of Bodø. We're using this to gather data about the city and to further plan how we can develop this city to be a more sustainable city. So we need to identify how things are going now, and we need to use that knowledge to make data-driven decisions on how we can improve and how we can develop this area that you see in front of you now. That is the area that has a military base that is to be moved, and that where we're going to build a new part of the city. So I've just laid in some, I've just populated this digital twin with some example data. For example, the red line that you see here is the noise zone to the new airport. You can see I'm live now, so you can see these bars that is going up and down. That is the vehicles that is passing through different points. We have a direct API to the National Road Authority for these measures, so we can measure the traffic at these points at any time. And in this specific example, I am measuring the 2021 values against the 2020 values, or the 2020 values, to see if there has been any development in the traffic patterns this year compared to last year. So we can also fetch that data. In a graph, for example. Yeah, we don't need to do that now, it takes some time. We can fetch that data and do an analysis to see the traffic development. And we can also simulate how traffic would be affected, for example, if we were not to treat this mass. There's hundreds of thousands of masses and materials lying at this area. So we want to, for example, use this tool to simulate how much traffic and how much correlating pollution it will lead to if these masses were to be treated in an unbeneficial way. For example, if it was to be transported long distances instead of reusing the masses and materials where they are. Furthermore, we're using this digital twin of Bodø to identify the resources that is lying here. For example, here we have a hangar, and we know that it's built of concrete. We know that it might be lightly polluted, and we have an understanding of how much it weighs. So we're trying to identify everything that lies here. For example, we've done such analysis. If we can just look at this, for example, this is a heat map that indicates the quality and the pollution of the masses there. So I don't think I have time to go through every data that we are populating this digital twin with, but we're just in general, we're looking into how different values in a city is correlating to each other. We're getting knowledge about that. We're identifying traffic patterns. You can see, for example, these lines, they are representing the intensity of traffic in the different roads in the city. And maybe we can see if there's some actions that we can do to reduce the intensity of traffic, for example. For example, maybe we can in emergency planning, we can see if there's waste transport at the same time as there's typically a rush hour. Maybe we can try to see if we can move the waste transports to ease the intensity. I don't think I have many minutes left, so I can just round up by showing you this wheel. This is a data set that we've gathered in order to call ourselves a United for Smart Sustainable City due to UN's demands on the data that we have to report to them. So we're comparing Bodø's values, sustainability values, it's over 100 KPIs that we're gathering data on to UN's standard, and the color codes here shows us how good we are performing on the different fields. So we can look into environment, for example, and we can see that most of it is actually green. We can see that water, for example, is orange, and we can see why is that, and that is not because the quality of the water is bad, but because we are consuming too much water. We're in comparison to UN's ideal, we're not doing great on water consumption. So I would love to tell you more about this. I would love to tell you more about how we're how we have sensors that shall pick up the air quality, how that correlates with life quality, how we are populating this map with socioeconomic data to see if there's any correlation between circular economy and quality of life, for example. And I also just wanted to show you this quick model that we've built in the digital twin, where this airport does not yet exist, but we've tried to build a simulation of how the new part of the city can look, taking into consideration the inhabitant involvement activities that we've had surveys on. So if you would like to hear more about it, you can just contact me. Thank you so much for my time.
Thank you very much, Tor. Kristoffer, I guess that was the end of your presentation together. Yeah. Very interesting to hear about Bodø, and I think it's interesting how visualization make challenges much more visible for us and make us more interested in the challenges ahead. And this was a good connection to our next presentation. Mr. Ho Chi Kit, Senior Director in CNW Services. You will talk to us about digital twins as well.
Good morning, everyone in Norway, and good afternoon to the audience in Singapore. So my discussion topic today is on using digital twins to support asset management decisions in a built environment that will benefit the circular economy. So my name is Chi Kit. I am a Senior Director in Cushman & Wakefield, a global real estate consultancy firm. And concurrently, I'm also a first-year Doctor of Engineering student in Singapore Institute of Technology, SIT. With me today are my two doctorate program mentors, namely Prof. Sen Kin Jet and Dr. Kang Kok Hin. Maybe just let me close. Yeah. So as a real estate management and consultancy firm, we want to be the best real estate company for a better world. So we fully subscribe to the 17 United Nations SDG goals to contribute to a better built environment. So as a business, we want to remain competitive and attractive to investors. We want to have a better quality of life for all our stakeholders, and we want to build a sustainable future for the owner and investors in the built environment. So to achieve this, we want to embark on a roadmap that enable humans and machines to integrate and interact more efficiently and effectively, to improve building performance, to reduce operational costs, and mitigate risk to operations as well as to the environment. So one common tool that is widely available to achieve this would be the digital twin. Is a virtual representation of the static and the dynamic data in the building across its entire life cycle. So a digital twin is only a tool and a platform. So in this picture, we have a smart glass worn by one of our engineers to provide remote technical advice to our field inspectors from a centralized command center. So as a physical and the digital world overlap and become what we call phi digital, so it's very timely for us to relook into our future strategies that will work best for the built environment to enable a better world. So SIT, which stands for the Singapore Institute of Technology, is located in Punggol Digital District. So SIT is also commonly known as the Punggol campus. So it's envisioned as a living lab where innovations in multi-energy systems, cybersecurity, smart living, and asset management strategies will be pioneered. So partnership and human talents really power innovations at the Punggol Smart District. So in the future, the district manager has access to the bright minds and the technologies at the universities, as well as the industrial and corporates that is cited within this smart district. So this generally hopes to achieve and foster and enable better integration between industry, academia, as well as operators. So connectivity and community are the key to a smart city. So an open digital platform integrates the various smart technologies such as facility management, security, autonomous goods delivery system, whereby it could optimize energy resource efficiency in the district. So one important factor is that data is consolidated in the digital twin. So this allows companies and corporates to experiment and test-based solutions in a safe and secure environment. As Dr. Steven has mentioned, if let's say there's a failure, the students will be happy with a couple of hours of no lessons. But if it's in the actual industry, we could be facing numerous lawsuits and financial heavy penalties. So a digital twin also have the repository of all the historical data. So this historical data can be used to train the AI model to predict and to forecast future scenarios that could enable smarter decisions. So this enables us to have a thinking facility for the future. So mobility devices will also boost the building operators' effectiveness through augmented reality. So let's dive deeper to some examples of digital twin, whereby building performance in real time from a centralized location can be displayed on the display panel. So with artificial intelligence modules that could highlight anomalies such as energy inefficiencies or any other impending equipment breakdown. So mobility devices can also boost the building operators' effectiveness through augmented reality. Technology is great, but it does not replace the foot on the ground to observe and to identify delicate changes in the environment. So upon identifying an issue, an engineer can use his mobile device to carry out a quick investigation and a diagnostic on the go immediately. So it's obvious that we need to be cleverer in building a smart ecosystem that benefits the operators, the designers, as well as the stakeholders that is residing within the building. So let's take a physical asset, in this case, a building. So using a BIM model as a base to develop a virtual model. So through this two-way exchange in real time, the data exchange in real time between the physical and the virtual model, we have a digital twin that's reflective of the real world environment. So the digital twin comes to life when human processes are seamlessly integrated. So the plan, do, check action, be it through human or through an AI algorithm, is relevant today and also in the future. So through this life cycle of the building, assets are tracked. So similar in concept to blockchains, where this information can be tagged to the asset over its entire life cycle. And in the big phase is how these materials, equipment, devices influence future building performance and life cycle costs. So all this information advises both the architects and the engineers on equipment life cycle performance that will influence future buildings. And then the future twin facilitates the actual operation documentation of the asset as well. So each device, go through different environments. They deal with things like weather, environment factors. They have different tolerance. They would shift and they would drift. So this documentation in the digital form of the asset through the life cycle really documents the aging process in a very digital form. So this feedback, when done properly, not only facilitate the operations of the equipment and the product, but also help facilitate better design, better manufacturing. And through these lessons, we can recalibrate and redefine how to design better future buildings. And through this digitization of the asset information, operators can also make use of this information to avoid waste generation, reduce and recycle as much of the products that we generate through building operations. And I would like to touch on the 4 key steps in the physical digital strategy, which is connect, see, think, and do. So in connect and see, it really starts with how we get sensors connected, how we get human behaviors connected and observed and translated into a digital model. And through this connection and integration of the data pools together, we would really be able to see the actual situation. And through this dynamic model of the digital twin, is really about how we make use of this rich resource of both numerical and categorical data. And through this, we could train the AI model to think, to predict, and to forecast future events. And the power of AI today would be, for example, an AI model can propose 2 operational plans for the human operator, highlighting different risk profile of the 2 plans, highlighting the different life cycle cost implication in real time. And with the power of AI embedded in this smart building, machine-to-machine interface can be implemented in a very efficient way. So many of these building automations can be done with human over the loop or human out the loop. And lastly, in do, human operator through these AI-assisted strategies can select the best action required to resolve the problems. And the AI model can very quickly implement the approved plan, via machine-to-machine interfaces to close the loop and to be able to really resolve the issues very quickly. So there are essential capabilities that must be present in a smart ecosystem in the digital form that is required to be closed loop and also be regenerative. So these are the key drivers to success, in my opinion. Okay. So firstly, asset information management system is critical. We need good quality data that has good continuity over at least 2 to 3 years. Okay. So having a good asset information management system is essential in building this digitized asset register. And referring to ISO 55000 is important to understand the needs of the asset management. So data is just a number. It needs to be humanized and presented in a way that humans understand. Be a graph or a 3D map. We need a good man-machine interface to transform data into useful dashboards. Thirdly, we must apply analytics at every step. The amount of information that we are dealing with in the physical digital world has to be translated to building operations. And this data is staggering, and we really rely on data analytics to enable us to derive insights that is both real-time and useful for the operators. And lastly, analytics must be predictive oriented in its nature, and that data that comes from a digital twin must be in an open platform. We must be able to access it from a variety of different sources. We must be able to pull together everything into an integrated model. So you need to make this integrated model dynamic. You have to shift and be adaptive as you go through the building phases and the operational phases, as what we need to be ready in the entire life cycle of a building. And lastly, the smartness in the building is measured by the efficient use of its energy resources, as well as the happiness and the comfort of the people working in the building. Thank you for your time, and I'd like to hand over back to the program chair for the next speaker, Dr. Caroline Cheng. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chee. This was interesting to see how you took the city loops digital twin down to a perspective of a building operation digital twin in that sense. And AI, of course, that is yeah, a common topic here now. Thank you. Then we continue to Dr. Caroline Cheng from Sintef community. You will tell us about technical and non-technical innovation for carbon neutral cities. The floor is yours, Caroline.
Yeah, just checking. Are you seeing my slides?
Yes, we do.
And you hear me well. Okay, great. Yes, good afternoon to all of you in Singapore, and still good morning to you all in Norway. Very happy to be able to have the opportunity to be part of this. My name is Caroline Cheng, and yes, I'm originally from Singapore, but now I'm a research scientist at Sintef community in Trondheim, Norway. I work mainly in EU projects dealing with the implementation of climate-friendly buildings and neighborhoods, as well as digital transformation of the construction industry. My area of focus is innovation management, exploitation, and market uptake in these projects. So hence the title of the talk today. For today, I'm specifically going to draw on one of the projects I work in, called Synekia, which stands for Plus Energy Houses in Greek. And I will jump right into it. So I would first like to start with this very back of the envelope word cloud. Carbon neutral districts, to tie back to the title of the session today, is arguably an umbrella term for a large number of different terms used for strategies aimed at reducing energy use or greenhouse gas emissions in cluster of buildings. And as we have heard from various speakers today, they can really vary very much in scale. Widely used terms also include zero emission neighborhoods, like what our presenters from Bodø has shared, or positive energy districts, which Annemie has also touched on. And this is where at least 2 research networks domiciled in Europe focus their efforts on. I contribute as a sub-task leader in the IEA EBC Annex 83 Positive Energy Districts, where the aim is to develop an in-depth definition of PEDs, as well as methods and tools and technologies related to realizing these internationally. I'm also a working member of the Cost Action PED EUnet, which facilitates open sharing of knowledge, exchange of ideas, pooling of resources, experimentation of new methods, and co-creation of novel PET solutions across Europe. So Europe is certainly a hotspot for case studies in carbon neutral districts, but it is recognized there are many ways to implement them in various contexts. But while heterogeneous, what unites this vast array of terms and the various research networks, whether in Europe or between Norway and Singapore, is that there is the ambition to make carbon neutral districts a widespread reality. The process of implementing carbon neutral districts, we all now acknowledge that the success of implementing this pioneering concept will not only depend on adapting technical solutions, but also on mobilizing social, political, and business commitments. So while the heart of a carbon neutral district needs a high level of energy efficiency, using passive or active measures, high share of renewable energy resources, cost-effective energy flexibility, and also tailored electric vehicle charging infrastructures, for example, it also needs a circulatory system around the heart to sustain it. Stakeholder involvement remain one of the key barriers for implementation of carbon neutral district projects, especially when they are not mega urban projects. The setup of every carbon neutral district will always involve multiple building blocks and a large number of stakeholders and contributors, which will each have their own ambitions, agendas, interests, and constraints. So every carbon neutral district is a complex process that requires a high degree of coordination due to its multi-stakeholder environment. And in the projects that we are involved in, we have also been made increasingly aware that stakeholders tend to shift their positions or rethink their involvement while moving from one phase of development to another. So the bottom line is focusing on technical and non-technical innovations alone would be letting the ambition of carbon neutral districts slip away. To make this point more concrete, I would like to draw on the Synekia project, where Sintef community is responsible for innovation management and key exploitable results. So as I mentioned, Synekia stands for Plus Energy Houses in Greek. And with more than one house, it also means neighborhood. So Synekia means plus energy, houses, and neighborhoods. It is an EU Horizon 2020 project that was kicked off in early 2020 and will last till 2024. The overarching objective of this project is to deliver a blueprint master plan, including technical, financial, legal, and social issues for the development of what's termed as sustainable plus energy neighborhoods in different contexts, climates, and markets in Europe. So in addition to having a heart of high-level energy efficiency, high share of renewable energy resources, or cost-effective energy flexibility, Sintef will also focus on architectural design and spatial quality, as well as the social aspects of occupant sustainable behavior and citizen involvement, all encapsulated in the concept of SPEN, Sustainable Plus Energy Neighborhood. One of the specific goals of Sintef is to increase the